The NBA world is spinning a little faster since the Anthony Davis trade request broke. Jim Strickland among the fans who thought about setting the jersey on fire, but then realized he was in his living room and decided to thank him instead. Nicely done.
Good decision.
And now he's going to mark up his face. I'm going to argue maybe not as good a decision. It's going to be hard to get out. It's going to be hard.
That's a Sharpie, Coach. That's going to stick for a while.
It's going to be there for a little while.
As they say, that'll leave a mark.
That will leave a mark. Welcome into Game Time Live. Good to have you with us. That's the Friar David Griffin. Mike Fratello, the czar right there. I'm Matt Weiner. I don't have a nickname. That's all right. I'm good.
It's untrue, Monsignor.
The news cycle has shifted to Anthony Davis watch, and that's likely to be the case between now and whenever AD is off to his next team. Like his teammates, Davis coach Alvin Gentry is left to deal with questions about a star player who no longer wishes to be with his team.
Well, we'll do as good a job as everybody else has done the last 6 games. How about that? We'll try hard to hold him under 50, okay? And that means we've done as good a job as anybody else.
I was actually, Alvin, talking about trying to deal with James Harden tonight. As for the Davis situation, look, we have a coach, we have a GM here in the building, so you two get to role play here a little bit. Put yourself in the position of Alvin or Dell Dem's spot in the front office. Now that you know definitively, and you probably had your suspicions beforehand, but now that you know definitively that Anthony Davis' plans aren't going to keep him in New Orleans long term, how do you proceed?
You know, it's interesting. I do very little, frankly, and I think if you're Dell Demps, this could not have taken you by surprise. You had to have been in a situation where the moment Rich Paul and Clutch Sports were able to sign Anthony Davis as a client, you had to understand the game was going to be played a different way. And I'm sure this did not take them by surprise. Some of the sound that I got to see yesterday with Drew Holiday talking after practice about his thoughts on it, he was very clearly not surprised. So you can't react now in the next 7 to 10 days as though something of substance has happened. Nothing really should be changing from your viewpoint. You should have had laid out what your expectation is in an AD deal, what you would be willing to accept and what you will not accept. And nothing should change that between now and the deadline. This was done in such a way with a timing that it was meant to create leverage on the part of someone that is not the New Orleans Pelicans. And so what they need to do is stay the course and wait until they can make the deal that they're comfortable with. And if that's at the end of the season, so be it. But I would do very little that I wasn't already planning on doing.
And Coach, if you're Alvin Gentry, aside from having to answer a bunch of questions about this, what changes for you in terms of how you go about your day-to-day and how you talk to your team now that this is the cat's out of the bag?
I think there's an order that you have to go through as the head coach. The first thing is you go in and sit down with your general manager and you say to him, this is what I propose doing right now, because you know he's going to find out very soon, because the players that are in the room, when you talk to them, are going to tell their agents, and then the agents are going to call him, and he's going to have to deal with all that. So first, I want to get his permission that this is what I want to say. I think it's the right thing. Are you okay with that? Then you proceed, and I sit down with Anthony Davis next, alone. And I say to him, listen, this is not a secret, obviously, and we've got to maintain the course that we set out to try and make the playoffs and go as far as we can into the playoffs. Now, do I know Anthony Davis is coming back and going to be part of it, or is he going to be out and not play again for the remainder of the season? Because that's two different things altogether. But assuming that he wants to come back and be part of it after his finger heals up, that type of thing, I have to explain to him, we're going to have a team meeting, and I'm going to deal with this in the locker room with you sitting there, and explain that whatever is out in the media, don't think it was hidden from the players by any means.
Right, right.
How are we handling this as a team, and how is that changing our focus on what we're trying to do? Our mission is get as much done as we can while this guy is here, and if he does go on to somewhere else, we have to move forward with our plans.
And interesting in terms of navigating the rest of the season, the Pelicans are in a position where it's almost a make or break spot. They're 5.5 games out of that 8th spot in the Western Conference, and if they fall even further down with Davis out of the lineup right now, that could influence whatever decision they're going to make here moving forward. When you're thinking about deals, David, you're thinking priorities. Your priorities are what here exactly? What do you want to get back? When do you want to get it done?
Well, I think it's interesting because everything in their thought process changed once AD got injured. I think they still were trying to be a buyer potentially at the deadline heading into this next week or so. And now they could very much be thinking of themselves as a seller, which changes everything about the way you look at your team. So to your point about what the team does next, that's a tough issue because you really don't know where you're going to fall in that spectrum because presumably you've been doing a lot of work relative to lining up what you buy. You haven't really been setting the market in terms of what you sell beyond AD. So from an AD perspective, I think what your criteria need to be are whatever it was that organizationally you and ownership had said unequivocally, these are the must-haves. If what you were wanted to build with was lottery picks, then obviously pick quality needs to be part of that, and you're better off waiting until the draft. If what you wanted to do was put playoff caliber players in there like San Antonio did when they moved Kawhi, then you needed to know who had the DeMar DeRozan type name that was in that conversation. But there are several paths that you can take, and you had to have those deals lined up. And I think if you're looking at what the bare minimum you need to meet is, it's whatever meets your criteria. For me personally, as I look at that, if I was holding their cards, I would probably want to be in a situation where I got at least one young player that projected potentially to be a star, draft picks, an elite role player, somebody that could really further the cause for us as a winner. Because when you're bringing more young kids to the fore, you need those guys to galvanize a group.
Griff, let me ask you this. Good move, bad move. You're right around All-Star break now, and you find out this news about Anthony Davis wanting to move on at the end of the year, whenever it happens. Do you sit down and say, all right, you know what, we don't have him back anymore, and we're not hearing offers that we like. Do you take Anthony Davis along maybe with Holiday and your next best player, and do you unload them right now? Which means the second half of the season, you probably aren't going to be a very good team, but you start out with making your pick that much better.
Boy, I sure don't. I wouldn't go that far, I don't think, in that market. I don't think they could withstand that kind of a rebuild. And frankly, I really am very high on Drew Holiday, by way of example. I don't think you're that terribly far away from being competitive if that's what ownership had set out to be. If what you want to do is start over again, you can still put yourself in a position to play more young kids, recoup young assets down the road for Anthony Davis, and still in the Western Conference not be a playoff team. Your pick's going to be preserved simply by virtue of the fact that this upheaval has happened.
Right. 13th in the West right now, 5.5 games out of the final playoff spot in the Western Conference. And again, Davis is not going to be back anytime real soon, and who knows when, with the trade deadline coming up next Thursday. Time for tonight's winning ingredients, delivered by Papa John's, and with all the other stuff that Alvin Gentry and the Pelicans have to deal with. Oh yeah, there's James Harden, who's averaged 44 in the month of January, and regardless of what he does tonight, will become the fourth player in NBA history to average 40 points for a calendar month. A remarkable thing. Even more remarkable that Wilt did it 11 times. Kobe actually did that 4 times. I did not realize that.
No, that's a remarkable number, especially in today's league, the way the game is played. To have him be in a position to do this with all of the great stars we have, and so many guys have never done this, really speaks to a lot of different things. But I think it's the perfect blend of the right coach, the right front office, and the right star.
And you have to remember, he's doing this. Wilt did not bring the ball down the floor, did not dribble into the low post area, and then did not dunk it on top of people. Somebody was passing him the ball. James does this all basically on his own. It's not him coming off a screen, somebody hits him, he catches and shoots it. He doesn't operate that way. So what, 95, 98% of the time, it's James by himself during this month making things happen for himself.
Virtually all unassisted baskets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coach, you know, I just learned Wilt Chamberlain was underutilized. He should have been given the ball and said, just
should have
go.
been taking it up. He did just about everything else. So Harden will try to extend his 30-point scoring streak to 24. He'll also try to extend his streak of being the leading scorer among all scorers in the game he's playing to 24, which is another remarkable team because that affects the other team.
Well, it might actually get more difficult in a weird sort of way because he has more talent with him now. One of the things that really sort of propelled him on this streak was the fact that there's nobody else to demand the ball. And what's fascinating is it played right into the sort of mad science experiment that they've had, which is if we can control every single possession and control outcome possession by possession, we can overcome the fact that we may not be deep enough on the defensive side of the ball. Chris Paul coming back means he may have less touches and maybe they're less efficient offensively, which in a weird way puts more pressure on their defense.
By the way, Harden's next 50-point game will move him up the all-time list of career 50-point games. He'll pass Rick Barry for 5th all-time if he gets number 15 or when he gets number 15. It's going to happen sooner or later. Again, Wilt skews the graphic with 118 career 50-point games. You do that when you average 50 for an entire season. That tends to mess things up. Over/under tonight against the Pelicans, the shorthanded Pelicans, for points for James Harden. We're going to put it at 45.
I'm under. I think that Alvin Gentry is not afraid to try something different. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Alvin say, we're going to trap him every time he goes this way or that way, or send the guy at him to get the ball out of his hands. Try something a little bit different. He would do that.
Okay.
So I was adamantly to the under when I first was posed this question here as we were talking offset. I have to be honest with you. I think I've come around to the idea that simply because you and I are working, it has to be a given that he gets 50 points. So I'm going to take the over.
That is a sound strategy. I can't argue with that kind of logic. I'm going to go under as well. Chris Paul's out there. He's going to take some of the possessions away from him. And frankly, the Pelicans aren't playing very well right now. Defensively, they've been really bad all season. Harden might not need to play a ton in the fourth quarter. We'll see how that plays out later on tonight. Much more coming up here on Game Time here for a Tuesday night. It's a players-only Tuesday night on TNT. On the other side, we'll get into the All-Star game. You know the starters, the reserves coming your way on Thursday. We'll help out with our picks on the other side.